Welcome to the True Guy Globe brief updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for updates. In a moment that will be remembered for generations, Taipei and Beijing have announced a historic peace framework, an unprecedented step that signals a dramatic shift in the region's future. This is an event few believed possible after decades of simmering tension, military brinkmanship, and the ever-present threat of war. For years, the Taiwan Strait has been a symbol of unresolved conflict, a place where the world held its breath, fearing that a single miscalculation could ignite a global crisis. The waters between Taiwan and mainland China have long been patrolled by warships, their presence a constant reminder of the fragile peace. International observers have watched anxiously as both sides engaged in military exercises and diplomatic posturing, knowing that the stakes extended far beyond the region. Now, in a remarkable turn, leaders from both sides have pledged to turn the page. They are choosing dialogue over confrontation, and shared prosperity over division. The signing of this peace framework is more than a political gesture. It is a commitment to a new era, one built on trust, communication, and mutual respect. For generations who have lived under the shadow of war, the sudden shift to direct communication and economic integration feels almost surreal. Families who once feared for their future now dare to hope for stability and opportunity. In living rooms across Taiwan, people are watching the news with cautious optimism, wondering if this peace will finally allow them to live without fear. The agreement marks a profound psychological shift. Both governments now recognize that the risks of conflict far outweigh any potential gains. Behind closed doors, diplomats and policymakers have worked tirelessly, weighing every word and gesture, determined to avoid the mistakes of the past. For Taiwan, this is a reprieve from existential dread, a chance to focus on building a vibrant, secure society. Children can play in parks without the constant worry of air raid sirens, and families can plan for the future with renewed confidence. For China, the peace framework offers a valuable opportunity to redirect energy and resources toward economic well-being. With stability in the strait, Chinese businesses can expand, markets can flourish, and the nation can focus on growth and innovation rather than military escalation. The world is watching, holding its breath as this fragile new dawn unfolds. International leaders, journalists, and ordinary citizens alike are following every development, hopeful that this bold experiment in peace will inspire other regions plagued by conflict. Yet, the question remains: will this bold step forward endure, or will old storms return to darken the horizon? Only time will tell if this new chapter in the Taiwan Strait will lead to lasting peace, or if the ghosts of the past will once again threaten the promise of a brighter future. The China-Taiwan agreement stunned the world. It was a moment that seemed to defy all expectations, sending shockwaves through newsrooms and government offices across the globe. For years, the relationship between China and Taiwan had been defined by tension, suspicion, and the ever-present threat of conflict. Suddenly, the unthinkable had happened, and the world was left scrambling to understand how such a dramatic shift could occur almost overnight. Almost no one saw it coming. Analysts, diplomats, and even seasoned observers were caught off guard. The headlines flashed across screens in every major city, and people everywhere paused to take in the news, trying to make sense of what had just unfolded. For years, escalating military posturing and nationalist rhetoric made war seem inevitable. The world watched as both sides flexed their military might, with exercises, flyovers, and heated speeches fueling fears that a spark could ignite a devastating conflict at any moment. Beijing squeezed Taiwan's international space. The island was increasingly isolated on the world stage, its voice often silenced or ignored in global forums. China's pressure campaigns left little room for dialogue, and the international community largely accepted this as the new normal. Taiwan deepened ties with the US and asserted its identity. Determined to chart its own course, Taiwan strengthened its alliances, built new partnerships, and made its presence felt in ways that challenged Beijing's narrative. The idea of compromise seemed impossible, with both sides locked in a dangerous feedback loop. Every move was met with a countermove, every gesture of goodwill drowned out by suspicion and mistrust. The world braced for the worst, convinced that neither side would ever back down. Yet behind the scenes, leaders weighed the catastrophic costs of war against the benefits of stability. Quiet conversations unfolded in back rooms and private channels as decision-makers considered the human, economic, and political toll that open conflict would bring. Economic headwinds, the specter of modern conflict, and public exhaustion opened the door to pragmatism. As economies faltered and citizens grew weary of endless tension, the appetite for risk diminished. The realities of a globalized world, interconnected markets, shared challenges, and the high cost of instability forced a new kind of thinking. The world's surprise reveals how assumptions can blind us to change. We become so accustomed to the status quo, so certain that history will repeat itself, that we fail to notice the subtle shifts happening beneath the surface. Sometimes, history takes an unexpected turn. The events that shape our world often arrive without warning, rewriting the narratives we thought were set in stone. In moments like these, the impossible becomes reality, and the future opens up in ways no one could have predicted. This deal is a reminder, no matter how entrenched a conflict may seem, there is always the possibility for change. Agreements like this are rare, but they show us that dialogue and diplomacy can prevail, even when hope seems lost. Even the most entrenched conflicts can shift, if leaders are willing to take risks, challenge old assumptions, and imagine a different future. Peace is never easy, but it is always possible. If leaders dare to redraw the map, they can change the course of history, not just for their own people, but for the entire world. To truly grasp the magnitude and significance of this historic agreement, we need to understand the deep roots of the conflict and the decades of tension that have shaped the relationship between China and Taiwan. Our story begins in 1949, a pivotal year that forever altered the course of East Asian history. The Chinese Civil War, a brutal and devastating conflict, tore the nation apart, pitting the communist forces against the nationalist government. As the communists, led by Mao Zedong, seized control of the mainland, the defeated nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek retreated across the sea to the island of Taiwan. Both sides claimed to be the legitimate government of all China, setting the stage for decades of rivalry and uncertainty. Over time, most countries around the world shifted their official recognition to Beijing, acknowledging the People's Republic of China as the sole representative of China. Yet, despite this diplomatic shift, many nations maintained strong, unofficial ties with Taiwan, supporting its economy and people in subtle but significant ways. In the decades that followed, Taiwan underwent a remarkable transformation. It evolved from an authoritarian regime into a vibrant, thriving democracy with free elections, a lively civil society, and a unique cultural identity that set it apart from the mainland. This growing sense of Taiwanese identity only deepened the divide, fueling friction and suspicion from Beijing. The threat of invasion, military standoffs, and tense moments along the Taiwan Strait became a constant reality for the region. Both sides engaged in military exercises and posturing, keeping the world on edge and raising fears of a potential conflict that could have global consequences. For decades, the region has been defined by this uneasy peace, marked by tension, near conflict, and a persistent sense of uncertainty. Political meetings often ended in stalemate, while protests and demonstrations in Taiwan highlighted the island's desire for self-determination. Now, with the introduction of this new peace framework, the world is witnessing a radical departure from the past. This agreement represents a rare and precious opportunity, a chance to finally step out of the long shadow cast by the Civil War of 1949 and to build a future based on dialogue, cooperation, and mutual respect. It's an ambitious attempt to move beyond a legacy of division and mistrust, offering hope that the wounds of history can begin to heal, and that a new era of peace and understanding might finally be within reach for both sides of the strait. The Strait Stability Framework is a diplomatic breakthrough, freezing the sovereignty question for 50 years. Beijing pledges no force. Taipei agrees not to pursue formal independence. The deal creates a cross-strait economic cooperation zone, lowering trade barriers and linking the two economies. Direct flights, joint infrastructure, and shared prosperity are at its core. Military de-escalation is key. Missile pullbacks, a hotline, and a buffer zone reduce the risk of accidental war. Cultural and educational exchanges aim to rebuild human connections and trust. The bet economic and personal ties will outlast old hostilities. It's a bold wager that cooperation can succeed where confrontation failed. Why did Beijing, seemingly at its strongest, choose peace? Economic realities, slowing growth, an aging population, and a fragile property sector made war too costly. A conflict would trigger crippling sanctions, cut off vital technology, and threaten the Communist Party's grip on power. Militarily, invading Taiwan remains a daunting, risky operation, one likely to draw in the US and Japan. The human and economic costs would be catastrophic. By choosing peace, China improves its global image, secures economic stability, and positions itself as a responsible power. This is not weakness, but strategic pragmatism. The world's reaction was swift and complex. In Washington, relief at reduced conflict risk is mixed with suspicion. Some fear the deal could make Taiwan too dependent on China. The US pledges to monitor the agreement closely, maintaining its defense commitments. Japan welcomes the reduced military threat but worries about China's long-term intentions and regional influence. The EU hails the deal as a diplomatic victory and a boost for global trade. Regional neighbors express relief, knowing a war would devastate their economies. Most global powers see hope, but remain cautious. The new reality demands vigilance and adaptation. The world is watching to see if peace will hold. What future does the Strait Stability Framework create? The best-case deep peace, economic integration and cultural exchange dissolve old animosities, building real trust. More likely cold peace, war is avoided, but suspicion lingers and true reconciliation remains elusive. Worst case, a fragile truce, one side breaks faith, tensions return, and the agreement unravels. The outcome depends on sustained political will, transparency, and the choices of leaders and citizens. External powers, especially the US, will shape the process. The world hopes for deep peace, fears a return to old tensions. This is a long-term project, not a quick fix. The journey has just begun. The China-Taiwan deal is reshaping global dynamics. The Taiwan Strait, once a flashpoint, now boosts economic confidence and secures vital semiconductor supply chains. The US must rethink its Indo-Pacific strategy as the threat of invasion recedes. Alliances like the Quad and AUKUS will need to adapt to this new reality. China's diplomatic victory enhances its soft power and influence across Asia and beyond. For the West, the challenge is now competing with a China wielding peace and partnership, not just military might. The deal offers a new model for resolving entrenched conflicts, freeze sovereignty, build ties, defer the hardest questions. Its success or failure will echo far beyond East Asia. The world is watching for lessons. This agreement is a beginning, not an end. The core dispute over sovereignty remains unresolved, merely postponed. The framework is a pragmatic truce, betting that peace and prosperity can reshape the future. Deep ideological divides and political challenges persist on both sides. Sustaining the deal will require courage, patience, and a focus on the catastrophic alternative. Yet, there's real hope. The agreement puts people's welfare above ideology and offers a path to stability. If it holds, it will secure peace for millions and inspire the world. Diplomacy, not conflict, is the message. The world watches, cautiously optimistic as a new chapter begins.